So I just watched the film Red Rocket. Um, my brother recommended it to me after watching Anora. It's the same director um, and writer, I think, too. Um, and kind of what I really like about this guy's films, not that I necessarily am recommending Red Rocket, you kind of have to have a. It's they're more interesting, like I don't know, observational pieces about kind of certain communities that are not so presentable, I suppose, to say. The character in the movie, Mikey, is a porn star who is kind of hitting a low point in his life, and he's kind of ousted from the scene, and he kind of has to tuck his tail and run to his home state, to his wife, technically, um, and his wife's mother, and basically he's homeless and he's looking for a place to stay. Um, and he's not a really nice character, but I think he's very real. I think this is something that the director does very well with his characters, and what I was very impressed with Anora is that all of the characters are just behaving according to their life philosophy. So the drug dealers are doing what they have to do. You know, the kind of dead end. But just kind of like a lot of dead end people, I guess, is like, not to be kind of rude about it, but like these are just guys who have fallen into this way of life, and it's really hard to escape it. And even I would say that applies to someone like Mikey. He's once you start doing porn, you're kind of like, he couldn't get a basic job, right? He couldn't get he couldn't work a fucking grocery store. He kind of gets ousted from society a little bit once you kind of dip your toes into some of these waters, which whatever, we could talk about that, but anyway, that's what he's dealing with. That's his reality. And he's kind of, he's just not a nice person. He takes advantage of all the people around him, like the entire film. That's all he does, is he mooches off of people. He gets rides. He avoids, the things that he does. And overall, he's kind of a dirty person. But he's still likable, and unfortunately, in a way, granted. But he's very charming with women, and that's kind of his whole strong point in life, is that he's a very sociable guy who he slept with a lot of women, and he's able to charm them. He's kind of figured it out, and he's got a big dick, so that kind of helps, I'm sure. But unfortunately, in this film, you see some, I would say, pretty terrible things that are realities in our world. This guy essentially grooms talent, so to speak. This sweet, innocent girl who is, I thought she was very wonderfully portrayed in this film. But she's just young, and I really thought that they showcased her talents well. She plays a musical number that's in the film that's just really, really wonderful, despite the context around it, which is kind of sad and tragic, because she's just in the middle of getting swept up in all this and groomed by this guy. Um, and but I think that if you look at the porn industry, which I'm not going to really talk about at length, but there's a lot of, I think, young girls in there who've probably been exploited in the same kind of way. Not that it's necessarily that they need to be ousted from society once they go that route. I think that's an interesting talking point, is that, like, why do we look so down upon them? They're just trying to live their life, and that's just how it happened to go for them. But anyway, the point is that this girl's probably gonna, they end the film with this particular character. I don't know if it's a fucking delirious vision or if that's actually what she was doing, but the last thing you see is this girl coming out in a bikini. Like, I guess the idea is that she's going to take the stage on into the porn world. And that's that's the dirty reality of this place, is that Mikey's, probably convinced this girl to do this shit. And, once she dips her toe into that water, it's going to change her life. She kind of gets a little bit of community, backlash for being with Mikey. People find out about him, and they send her videos, and apparently she doesn't care. And I guess that's going to be the case for somebody who ends up going down this life path of they do porn, and so obviously that associating with porn stars is probably just a necessary evil there. But anyway, to kind of talk about some of the other characters in the film, and to speak about the overall point of the film is that certain people are living their. I don't know. I couldn't really say. I think what he does is just examinations of these kind of certain cultures in our world, and tries to just talk about them because a little bit more openly. There's not much dialogue about some of these things, So I think it's kind of just an examination of that type of culture, but kind of also still separated. Like Mikey's away from that industry. It's not about porn. It's just about what is somebody who's done that. What happens at the end of that rope, and that's kind of what Mikey is, and that's kind of what Lexi is, and just the families around it. It paints a picture that it ends badly, and probably very often it does. And I think that I don't necessarily think it's telling you how to live a life or giving any sort of a recommendation, but I think he just looks at some of these characters with a little bit of empathy, and that the idea that maybe Mikey could have just stayed with Lexi, because Lexi's character is really tragic, because this guy comes back, and unfortunately she probably still loves him in a way. They have a lot of history, and sounds like she had a kid with somebody else at some point, and that kid is still growing up, but because of all the circumstances around her way of living, that kid was taken away maybe by child. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't get all the nuance of it, but that kid might be in child protective services essentially. And when Mikey returns, and they're sleeping together, and he's paying the bills despite the fact that he's stealing drugs. Which is just, I think, I'm not going to talk too much about the drug dealing family and how funny they were. I really just enjoyed when at the end of the film, kind of, the mom is talking shit with, the muscle guy, and they're, Mikey and this guy went to high school, and they have a history, but everybody really, likes Lil, and everybody, looks out for her, because everybody knows that Mikey's taking advantage of this family. And but they actually like this family because that's part of their community. And Mikey's kind of the outsider, who maybe at one point or another would have been accepted as part of this community, but he's left it, and he's gone to do his thing. And that's what Mikey wants. And he wanted to go back too. So I mean, Mikey's doing what he's just aligned with his worldview, and everybody else is aligned with theirs. So eventually, once Mikey tries to tell everybody, to tell Lexi, what he's going to do, and that he's going to leave them, and presumably he's going to take the money and the weed and all that other shit too, right? And so Lexi's like, fuck that, we're not doing, no, fuck that, basically. And that's a very reasonable response. She tells the drug dealing family, like, hey, fuck, this guy's going to bounce. He's going to take your weed. He's going to take your money. And, come get what's yours. And so they do. Because that's how this thing's meant to play out. And because there's kind of a semi-hilarious sequence when he runs from that house to the drug-dealing mom's house, and he's butt naked and in a, his fucking huge cock swinging all over. It's a funny fucking scene. Now, I just don't know if you're hearing me describe this, you don't know if you're going to enjoy that. If you think you might enjoy a hilarious scene where a dude's running butt naked for a couple miles to kind of try and get basically some money. He's going to go and beg this girl to give him, convince her family to give him some money so he can, leave and go to LA and not be, doing the same exact thing where he has zero money. But I'm sure that Mikey's going to figure it out. I guess is kind of the message here, is that he's a resourceful guy. There's a whole nother subplot that I'm not going to talk too much about. I just don't know how important it is. But, the character of Lonnie and his stolen valor act, and kind of just his, just kind of being a bum. Lonnie's not really has a lot going on. His father doesn't have a lot going on. And, but, he kind of gets swept up in this character like Mikey, who's, again, he's basically a social butterfly. Everybody kind of naturally likes Mikey because he's just one of those people that charms people out of their senses. He's so charming to some of these people. Like, I don't necessarily think he is charming, but he charms them out of like reasonable, logical, like they just kind of forget the fact that he's taken advantage of them. Well, I'm sure not all of them are so ignorant to it, but there are people like that kind of charm you, even though they're not so charming. They just have this talent in the way that they speak and the way that they act, and I think that's exactly what, Strawberry goes through, is just getting swept up into that. All in all, very entertaining film. I really enjoy what that director and writer is doing with the characters, and just kind of taking a look at some of these aspects of society that are, just they're real, and I think that those people's lives have value, and I think that by showing these lives, that's what the director is kind of is saying here. But overall, I mean, it's just fun to watch, if nothing else. Anyway, that's all I really got. So that was Red Rocket.